Tethered Nation, you guys have heard me talk about the saddle setup, Tethered Saddle Setup, their Predator platform, for quite some time. This is the second full season that I've used it. I've killed out of it twice now, and really what it has helped me do, I figured instead of, I've given you guys specs, the weight, and how light it is, bulky free that it is, and so on and so forth, but I thought today I would give you a little bit of a testimonial. As, I will credit, and there's been a lot of people who've had a lot of influence on how I've started to hunt and how I've kind of evolved as a hunter, but I would say there's been no piece of equipment that's been more instrumental in me making that evolution than Tethered's saddle setups. The reason I say that is that, I'm a guy that works like a normal job like everybody else out there. And so when I go on hunting trips or I'm hunting, I have limited time to get stuff done. So I typically want to hunt more aggressively. And that's something I've challenged myself with the past, year and a half, is to just, to be more aggressive and don't lay back. And the saddle setup has really helped me do that because I've spent much more time with boots on the ground scouting than I ever have in years past. And that's really because I'm not carrying a bunch of bulky stuff into the timber with me. And so I don't mind. It's not a hindrance to carry my saddle setup. And that way, when I find fresh sign, I can get into the tree and I don't have to leave and come back and drop scent. If once I see it, I'm in the tree hunting it. I'm not finding it, setting up a stand, taking the time to do that, then leaving and coming back and hunting it the next day. I'm literally getting into the tree and hunting it at that moment. And I can't say that if I was using any other setup other than a saddle setup, specifically Tethered's gear, that I would be making the same strides I'm making now and becoming a more aggressive and a more mobile hunter. So if this is something that you're interested in, if you want to challenge yourself to be more mobile, more aggressive, and go find deer instead of letting the deer find you, then I would suggest that you go to tetherednation.com and check out all their saddle gear. I guarantee you, if you get into it, you won't be disappointed, and you'll probably become an addict like me. This podcast is brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm actually having a little bit of Skull Brew coffee this morning while I record this. If you're not aware of what Skull Brew Coffee Company is, it's a business that my wife and I started. In order to give back more to conservation, we roast premium coffee, and it ships out within hours of roasting, guaranteeing that you will get the freshest coffee available. The kicker is that we donate 10% of our proceeds back to conservation. You choose where the donation goes at checkout. Check us out at skullbrewcoffee.com, and let's do some good together and help protect wild places one cup at a time. Visit skullbrewcoffee.com and pledge your support of conservation today. Welcome to the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Skull Brew Coffee Company. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 163. Today I'm joined by my buddy, Zach Ferenbaugh of the Hunting Public. We're talking public land, ground and pound, so stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. I'm actually not feeling fine today. I actually was at the Great American Outdoor Show in Harrisburg with my buddies from Exodus. I was hanging out with them. I'm actually recording this up front to put it out on Wednesday. I'm recording it on a Sunday to try to get it in because I have a crazy busy week this week. But I was planning to be at the Exodus booth all day today, and I was there all day on Saturday. And just started feeling, I think I caught the show crud early. That's kind of the thing that happens is when you go to some of these shows, you're meeting so many people, shaking so many hands, and, and it's great because you're talking deer and it's awesome. But you inevitably, or at least I do, just about every year, it seems like I ended up catching some type of flu, cold, stomach virus, you name it. I end up contracting it while I'm there. So before it hit me full fledged, I decided to drive my rear end back home. Before it kind of hit me full force and knocked me in the dirt. So with that, I'm not going to have a super lengthy up front here for you guys. We'll just kind of get ready to jump into the topic at hand. But I do want to give a little sense of what Zach and I are going to talk about here. I'm going to break this up into two parts because he and I talked for a long time. It was a little over 2+ hours that he and I had a conversation. I will say that, Zach was in the airport when we were talking. He was on his way back from Arizona. And so there is a little bit of audio interference during the course of our conversation. So apologize for that. But I think the content of the conversation is really, really good and really cool. So I wanted to make sure to put this out. So really, for me, I know I've mentioned it in the past, or I've at least alluded to it or began to allude to it, that, this year, and I'm doing this a little prematurely because John and I haven't done our full look back analysis of what our season was and so forth. And hopefully he and I will be able to do that soon because we're going to be, actually seeing each other face to face next weekend. But with that, I've already started to kind of evaluate last year and what I need to do to get better, and what are some things I can work on. And the biggest thing for me is, as I've over the years become more mobile, more aggressive, and I was actually just talking to Cody DeQuisto about this yesterday, is that in order for me to be able to kind of hunt however I need to in whatever the situation is, I need to be able to kind of hunt all styles. And that's kind of how I think about it. Like I'm a guy who likes mixed martial arts. I like the MMA and stuff like that. And what I really appreciate about their approach is those dudes they might have an area of expertise, right? So they might be, an expert in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That might be what they're known for example, but they are dominant whenever it comes to kickboxing, boxing, grappling, like whatever the case is. Like they put all these pieces together to make them lethal. I kind of look at it the same way when I'm hunting. Like, so if I'm just really good at, hunting from a saddle, I mean, that's only one part of being able to get the job done, because not every scenario necessarily, especially when you start getting out into some of those plain states, like you're not always going to have a tree to get into. And so ground hunting, still hunting, and stuff like that are, becoming increasingly more important to me, because I'm finding and coming up on setups, and I'm finding that some of these setups are really good because a lot of people aren't hunting that way. And so they aren't intruding in those areas. They may pass through, but they're not setting up, days on end trying to hunt those specific spots, because there are no trees to get into. And so deer, what I'm finding, get really comfortable in those places. So my whole idea is that this year, I try to pick one thing every offseason that I want to get better at. Last year was, switching to a back tension style release with my bow and spending the offseason getting familiar with that and shooting with that. And, and it was successful. I was able to kill a deer this year with it, and now it just feels second nature to me. So this offseason, what I'm really trying to focus on, and it's a little harder because it's not something I can just actively practice in the offseason, but, probably something I need to learn about and try to think about while I'm walking through the timber, is actually hunting from the ground. And that's kind of why I had Adam Scheffler on, or I'm sorry, not Adam Scheffler. He works for ESPN, Jared Scheffler, on the previous episode, is because they, of course, have a very distinct style and a way they get it done on the ground. Super, super aggressive, right? I don't think you could find a more aggressive group of guys that hunt ground and pound style. And so these next two episodes, wanted to bring Zach on, because Zach and just all the guys from the hunting public, have that kind of adaptive approach where they at times will be in a saddle. They at times will be in a tree stand. They at times, and I don't know, I see them in tree stands very much anymore. And they'll hunt from the ground. They'll still hunt. So they're actually using all their bag of tricks, depending on where they're at and what the setup requires. And that to me is more, probably more what I'm looking for. And so I wanted to have Zach on because I wanted to talk about those things and things you need to consider, how you evaluate setups, and just, whenever you're scouting, looking for certain things that could be good for a ground setup. These guys, of course, are well documented with their ground hunting and their scouting. We also talk a little bit about throughout this podcast, just like the importance of like freestyle hunting and freelance hunting. And, we talk a little bit about, and I know Zach is, a big proponent of this, but, off-season scouting is great, but we probably a lot of times put too much priority on it. I'm guilty of that. And that's one of the things this year I'm trying to make a change is, I want to go out and I want to pound some ground in the off season, because I got a couple pieces that I've never been to here in PA that I want to check out. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to spend a bunch of time. I kind of want to make my way through quickly. And we talk a little bit about that, just picking up like the fine points of what it is I need to know. That way when October comes, I'm able to kind of head to those spots, evaluate it quickly, and move on to the next spot. So you're really kind of merging like a speed scout, freelance hunt style of, approach, in that scenario. So that's really what Zach and I cover in these two pieces, holistically. And I'm probably going to break it into two chunks. But it's a really cool show. Super appreciative of him coming on. He always drops a lot of great knowledge, and I think you guys are gonna really dig it. But before we jump into this, I just want to say, as always, I appreciate all y'all's support, and thanks for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today I have a gentleman who probably needs a little introduction. We had him. He's a two-time offender on this program. He's the man who brings his own ghillie suit hat with him on every hunt. It's the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Zach Ferenbaugh. What's going on, man?
Oh, not much. Just trying to get my voice to recover a little bit. So apologize to everyone if I sound a little rough. I'm just getting over some sickness. So hopefully I can make it through.
Right. It's got a little bit of the ATA plague, maybe.
Man, I don't know. My girlfriend had it back around New Year's, and then thought I was in the clear, and then all of a sudden I started feeling real bad. right around the 5th of January, and I've had it since now. It's been weird, kind of on and off, but the voice is the one part that's struggling the most.
Right.
Hard to get about.
Right. Well,
It's hard for a guy who talks a lot too.
I know, right? I know. I got the same thing. It's what's funny, man, is like on some, especially whenever I go on hunts where maybe I'm by myself or whatever, don't have a partner with me, and you go for days and you don't talk to anybody. I get this weird feeling like I don't know that I can talk, and I wonder, you know what I mean? Like you start to psych yourself out a little bit. I'm like, I wonder if I can actually speak any longer.
I talk to myself enough to know that I'm still good there.
That you're all good.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, man, I'm sorry I missed you at ATA this year. I was hoping to get out there and run into you. I always like running into you, chatting you up, but wasn't able to make it. So, but I think this is a good consolation prize because there's a ton of stuff I want to cover with you today. And I figured, I know you said since you're holed up in the Arizona or the Phoenix airport, maybe that this would be a good time since you'd have a little bit of time. But before we dive into all the hunting stuff, where you headed? You out getting ready to catch another hunt?
Nope, I'm done. We're done for the year. Well, for the 2019 season.
Yeah.
We've been kind of all over the place, and time to take a little bit of a break. There's obviously still some seasons open, but at some point you got to draw the line, or
right.
You never get any time with friends and family. So looking forward to that. Actually, it's just one of those things I think from an outside perspective is overlooked as far as like, we get to hunt a lot. It's awesome. And I do truly love every day that I get to go hunting. But there's a, part two where all of a sudden you're like, man, I miss being at home. So I'm looking forward to hanging out with my girlfriend and, hanging out with family and some friends and stuff that don't necessarily get to hang out with much during the hunting season.
Right. Yeah, I hear that. For me, it's like I make no bones about it. I love going on hunting trips and hunting as much as I can, but I often hit about, I think like a 2-week mark usually is about when I'm doing it straight where I don't get a break, like a day off at all. That's like usually like my threshold where I'm like, all right, I need a day. You know what I mean? Just to like recalibrate, maybe talk to another human about something other than hunting for like a half hour.
Yeah. It's not always a bad thing to have diversity in life.
Right. Yeah. I mean, someone somewhere at one point said something about balance being key. And I think maybe they weren't crazy. I think there was some truth to that, but we're a little imbalanced. We're a little imbalanced on this show as we all dive into hunting. And I want to definitely dive into, a lot of ground tactics and stuff. But before we jump into that, man, I know you were out west on a hunt this year. I want to talk to you a little bit about that. Was that your first elk hunt / Western elk hunt?
Yeah, it was. It was first time ever hunting Colorado, and I've been going to Colorado since I was like a freshman in high school. My aunt and uncle moved out there, and I actually spend a lot of time out there now because my girlfriend lives in Colorado. So
right.
I've always wanted to hunt in Colorado. It's been kind of like a lifelong goal to try to get out there and do some sort of hunting. And finally came true this year, and hunted like in total 17 or 18 days of archery elk, and whether I was hunting or filming, and it was pretty awesome, man. Like it's something that I always knew I was, wanting to do, and I really don't see a situation I'm gonna stop doing it. The thing that's I was actually talking to somebody today about this. Like, the thing that I was most impressed with is the ability to get a tag and go.
Right.
My whole life, growing up in Ohio, it was like, I'd look at guys that were elk hunting and they're getting preference points for years and years, sometimes 15, 20 years. But that's what elk hunting was in my mind for, honestly, a long, long time. And then I just recently started finding out there's all kinds of opportunities to actually do Western hunting as a non-resident. And I think that's pretty awesome and something that I want to explore more of and just show more guys like, that have the mentality that I did that, hey, this is possible and, it's totally doable. So
right.
I think that's the coolest part about it for me.
Yeah, I mean, I managed to take my first trip on I guess it was 3 years ago now. I went to Montana. I have a buddy who lives out there,
Hmm.
and it was just all public land. We ended up getting an elk. He and I were at full draw on the same elk, and if it broke to the right, I was shooting it. If it was broke to the left, he was shooting it. It broke his way, and he ended up arrowing it, and we packed it out. So it was a successful hunt
Awesome.
in that regard. But I had opportunities at three different bulls, and just that one being the last one, and then I was at full draw on three different mule deer, and just couldn't get it done. But I don't know. He and I were talking not too long ago, and I was like, it was that trip that I don't know. It changed my perspective on like hunting and just the outdoors and stuff like that, because you just see things out there that you don't see in other places. And I'm not poo pooing things that we have, whether it's in Pennsylvania or Iowa or Ohio or wherever. But there's just something about the
Hmm.
West and that landscape that just kind of gets in your soul, I think.
Yeah, and I think I agree. It definitely like opens your eyes to different cultures. I always think any type of traveling opens your eyes to different like hunting cultures. But the other thing that I think hunting elk does is really makes everything a lot smaller when you go back east.
Oh yeah.
You can go and can look at a map, and I think it became even easier to break down whitetail property. And it's like, okay, this is easy stuff. If I was just looking for elk on a damn mountain, like now I can look at this little draw and pretty much figure out exactly how I want to approach it. And I guess I feel like it opened the door to look at stuff, maybe a little bit of a bigger picture, cover a little bit more ground in a day. And I just think getting new experiences, I think ultimately builds your skill set as a hunter. Experiences everything. Like, adding elk hunting to the resume, I think it's included in experience. Even though it's not whitetail hunting experience, it's going to help you in the deer and turkey woods and anything you pursue, I guess.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think for me it was, it was just learning a new species, right? And when you do that, you have to be so observant. And I think sometimes whenever we're whitetail hunting, especially if you're a diehard whitetail hunter or whatever, like a lot of times you start overlooking things because you start getting sloppy,
Oh yeah. Or
because,
you're overthinking it.
or yeah, exactly, or the opposite, exactly. So, headed out west, man, did you have what were your expectations for that trip?
Well, so how it played out kind of is I was gonna go. The original hunt was well. Let me take a quick step backwards. So me and my buddy Ben, who lives in Ohio, I've hunted with him quite a bit since he started THC. Like he's been on the videos and stuff. So if anybody's listening and has watched the videos, may recognize that name. But him and I have been talking, and we're like, man, we got to stop talking about elk hunting. Let's just do it. Let's do a Western trip, whether it's elk or mule deer. Like, we got to stop talking about it. We got to do it. So we kind of made the decision that we were going to do some hunts and started leaning towards Colorado elk. And just because of I spend a fair amount of time out there. And, the tag's easy to get, and there's tons of opportunity as far as places to go. And then we ended up getting invited to go on a hunt with some of the guys from Born and Raised. So Cody Kellum and Wesley Smith, we're going to go to Colorado and basically try to help us and Zach Sandow, who works in our act. They're basically going to just try to help us out and help us go a tag. And,
Right.
Ended up going out there with them for met up right there at the beginning of September, and we hunted for 10 days. And I guess my expectations going in was I'm just hoping to learn as much as possible because, obviously I'm about to go into some territory that I've never hunted in and going for a species that I've never hunted. So
Right.
I tried to educate myself as best as possible, but I also didn't want to overdo it in the fact of I think sometimes, again, it's easy to read kind of comes into that overthinking it type mentality of like you read into something too much and you don't create your own style.
Right.
And I think with whitetail hunting over the years, I think there was a point where I was reading into too much stuff and like trying to mimic others' style instead of creating my own style. So kind of went into it like it's like not overdoing the reading about elk. It's like I'm just going to go in here and just like obviously learn from Cody and Wesley and Zach who've elk hunted before, and just try to pick up on as many things as possible and just like, go in, read, sign, and then kind of create a style that works for me.
Right.
And Ted. Sorry, I also didn't mention Ted Sangerly was with us too.
Right.
So it was Cody, Wes, Zach, and Ted, and went out there for that first 10 days. And the stuff that I learned from those guys, I felt like was pretty priceless, right? Like those guys obviously have a lot of experience, and we had several encounters and had a bunch of close calls. I was full draw a lot of times. Had bulls. Had bulls anywhere from like 50 yards in range as 50 yards and 12 yards with no shot. Like wow. Just tough situations where you're like, man, like it's like something's got to give at some point. And just felt like we were having these good encounters and just not pulling anything off. And, ended up going. So I went with those guys. Got back and went and I guess came off the mountain for a couple of days. And then my buddy Ben came out because we were had been planning on going, and he came out on like the 13th, I think. Mm-hmm. No, 12th. Then on the 13th we kind of got in there, got to the area, hiked in, and ended up. Long story short, ended up having a pretty unbelievable hunt. All those times where everything went wrong, everything just went right. We just felt like we had the perfect moves, we had the perfect conditions to get where we wanted to, and ended up killing a bull. That was a pretty special moment for me. There was my best friend who I've hunted with, growing up for forever, and I had my buddy, an old friend and a new friend with me. My buddy Colin was also with us, and it was a pretty incredible experience to have gone in, learned a bunch with those guys, and put what we learned, to work without, those guys that had the experience. And it was just fun, rewarding, and I just love that. I love the physical aspect of elk hunting too, and just the never stop. You never stop moving, or you never have to stop moving. You just
right.
Continue on and continue to hunt. And we were backpacking too, so we were just always on move. We ended up where we ended up. And we slept right where it got dark on us. So,
nice.
I don't know. Just as far as expectations, my expectation ultimately was just to learn as much as possible, and I really, really do think that we did. Between myself and Ted and my buddy Ben and Colin, for our first year out hunting, the four of us, we learned so much, and I think we could go other places and really continue to have
right.
good hunts, at least where we're in the game, which was ultimately the goal, to walk away from the season and say, okay, I think I can get myself in the game.
Right.
Because obviously before you go, you don't know. You don't know.
Exactly. You could walk in and come out palms up I don't know what just happened for 15 days. It's easy enough to do. I was pretty lucky. Similar, not totally dissimilar from your experience. I was really looking my goal was just to have an experience that I've never had before. That was really it. I didn't have any other. I want to kill this or that or whatever. And I get out there, and my buddy was he was like, if you see a bull, are you going to shoot it? How big does it need to be? And I was like, dude, if it's a legal bull, I was like, I'm killing it.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, I'm not out here trying to trophy hunt or prove anything. And he's a dude who lived in Pennsylvania, grew up in PA, then he moved to Montana because he wanted to hunt and went to school out there. And now he works for the Forestry Service and stuff like that, and pretty much spends his days in the mountains. And so I had a pretty good guy to learn from, because he manages to kill elk every year. And, he's just one of those dudes that lives out west in Montana that you would look at as like a quintessential mountain man type of thing.
Yeah.
We would
Yeah.
leave for a hike, and we'd maybe do, I don't know, 10 miles in like a given day, or 12 or whatever it is. He would slam a bottle of water and eat like a granola bar before we would leave. He would take no compass, no GPS, no water, no pack, and would just go.
Hilarious.
Yeah. And I was just like, and meanwhile, I have like a bladder full of water, a GPS. I'm like, I'm ready to get lost for 5 days if I have to.
Right. Yeah.
But so I'm interested, man. Like, do you feel like, that Western hunt, considering that you do hunt from the ground for whitetails a lot, do you feel like that was a good analog for you, at least like foundationally, like a starting point to kind of to go from, since you do kind of, use that spot and stock kind of method, even when you're whitetail hunting to a degree?
I think it just translated from whitetail to elk very easily. But, right, like there are some things that, and don't get me wrong, I still appreciate this, but like there were times that I'd look at Cody and I'd say, like, dude, we hunt whitetails from the ground. Like, we're good. You know what I mean? Like we know how to stick to the shade, or like, use the cover to our advantage, use the wind. There's certain things. With that being said, there were certain times when moving up, obviously Cody and Wes there to say, hey, like, move up. It was important, but it was like the getting cover and knowing where your body is in relation to objects out there is just something that, if you've never hunted from the ground, like, it's going to be a tough learning curve. You get carried away, and all of a sudden you don't know where your bow end is when you draw back, and you get your one opportunity and you bounce your cam off of a tree limb. Like, I mean, without that experience, like, without the experience of hunting on the ground before, you're going to more likely to make this mistake. And I think it just made it a lot easier going into the elk field. I felt like, it's just no different than any other hunting that we do.
Right. So I want to get to, ground hunting. I think that's a good transition into like the main topic today was, and just in full disclosure, it's, while I was out in Iowa doing my rut hunt, or my rut trip this year, I had an opportunity to hunt from the ground once, and I've been looking at setups even around Pennsylvania whenever I'm scouting, different pieces of public and stuff like that, looking specifically for setups that might be conducive to the ground, just because my kind of thinking is, if you look at the majority of whitetail hunters, like, a lot of them are hunting from some type of elevated platform, whether it's a stand, whether it's a saddle, or whatever, and I've become a lot more mobile probably over the past 3 years, and being more aggressive. And in doing that, I've had a lot better encounters with a lot more mature deer, and the type of deer that I want to try to consistently hunt. And when I went to Iowa this year, it was one of those things where I didn't know really anything about the piece that I was hunting. So every day it was just kind of a hunt and a scout, or a scout and a hunt, like every day for 15 days. And, I ended up checking out a piece that was like a CRP field with a draw in the middle of it, and then the other side of that draw was CRP onto like a timber line, and I was trying to get to that timber line. I ended up actually, jumping, what looked to me at least as a booner, which that was the first time I've ever seen one on the hoof, which freaked. I actually cursed out loud at it as it ran away. Like, it was that shocking to me. And then I realized, like, he had seen me coming. Like, I had the wind in my face, but he was bedded with the wind to his back and was looking in my direction. I stopped and I glassed. I never picked him out. And so as I started making it down to that draw, he saw me and took off. So I found where he was bedded. He had a doe in there with him, because I ended up bumping her out as I got closer. And so I ended up going back and hunting him from the ground the next morning, hoping that maybe he would come back the following morning. And I ended up seeing I rattled in a young buck that came in, but not the one I was looking for. And it was just such a cool way to hunt, because I grew up hunting from the ground and still hunting with my dad. Like, I never hunted from an elevated situation until I was probably in my 30s. And then, and since then, it's like I've really only hunted, from an elevated position. And this was like the first time with a bow in my hand that I was actually hunting from the ground. And so, I wanted to kind of be able to use that, as an arsenal, or as something in my toolbox to use on different hunts. So I wanted to get like your perspective in your mind, what are the benefits that are clear to you of hunting from the ground versus other methods that you've used?
Well, I would first start by saying that, like, while I think this is a very important tool to have, I don't think that, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. It's not for everybody. Some people really love being stationary. I just got to a point in my hunting career where I was bored, and I didn't feel like I was, like, really challenging myself in any different way or just, like, trying anything new. I was just doing the same thing that I always did, and that was just getting in the tree stand one way or another. I kind of went through the same thing that you were explaining, where got more mobile for a couple of years there and was doing a lot more hanging hunts. But ultimately, I was just like, I feel like I want to get more, just even more aggressive. Like, I want to, I really just want to be the guy that, like, my friends look at and they're just like, that guy just, like, is, like, insanely aggressive. Like, nobody's going to be more aggressive than that.
Right.
And that's kind of just, like, I guess what I was kind of going for when I first started doing it. It's just do something different. I know it can work. I'bviously people didn't always have tree stands.
Right.
And the other thing is like, I've been watching for years now, Whitetail Adrenaline. And if people haven't watched Whitetail Adrenaline and they have any interest in ground hunting or just want pure entertainment, like, watch that stuff. It's awesome. And I was watching those guys do it, and I was like, man, I want to try this. Like, I want to get into this. So I started doing it, and I've been having success, and honestly, having way better success than I've ever had doing any other type of hunting. I think the benefits are, because you're always learning. You're learning way more than you would ever learn being stationary. When you're covering ground and you're moving on the ground, you're still hunting or whatever. Like, you're just seeing so much of a deer's habitat and how they interact with, different vegetation types or terrain types, that you're just every day you go hunting, no matter what, no matter if you spook every deer in the woods or don't see any deer at all. Like, you're seeing so much more sign. You're able to take some time that you've seen and relate it to past experiences or, use it for future experiences. And I think that right out of the gate is, like, ultimately the most beneficial aspect of hunting off the ground. Like, I can honestly say the amount of miles that I put on in a year compared to a guy who even is going as far as he can go into public land and setting up, it won't even be close. Like, I'm going to cover way more miles because I just never stop.
Yep.
I really don't. I've got to a point this past year I didn't set up, man. I, like, barely did a couple times, but, like, just never even setting up. Like, just not, maybe stopping for 45 minutes or an hour, at last light, kind of get to a spot where you're looking glassing or in the morning or something. But, like, never just, like, getting content and just setting up. To me, that seems like, this isn't true either, but it's, like, just the way that my mind is working with it at this point. It's like, stopping seems like just, like, giving up.
Right.
Like, setting up seems like giving up to me. And again, I'm not trying to dog any other type of hunting. I'm not.
Right.
It's just, like, my personality is like, I can't sit for very long. Like, I'm sitting in this corner right now in the airport, and I'm starting to really move my hands a lot. And I'm thinking, here at some point I'll probably stand up, start pacing, because that's what I do. Like, right. It's just in life I move around a lot. I'm pretty I don't know. I just antsy type of guy. So being in one spot at once for too long really wears me down. And I guess one thing I would say to anybody listening that's on the fence about it is, like, you don't have anything to lose.
Right.
You're going to mess some things up, and you're going to try some things that aren't going to work. I mean, you're going to have a buck. You're going to come in, and you're going to be like, oh, shit. I got my bow laying on the ground. He's 15 yards looking at me,
right.
And you're not going to be ready, and you're going to mess that up. But the next time, you won't mess that up.
Right.
And it's the same thing you went through when you learned how to tree stand hunt. there's a learning curve when you tree stand hunt too. You make the same mistake. You draw too early, spook a deer. You try moving when or you everybody's made the mistake of having mud on their boots when they're in the tree stand, and like mud falls when you start to move and you see a big buck. He's yeah, that's happened. Those things. There's a learning curve there too. The thing that you have to remember when you're going into trying a new style of hunting is like you're going to fail at it, but when you get pissed and you fail and you get pissed and you start pouting about it, you're not doing yourself anything good. Everybody makes mistakes. Right. And here's the beauty. Here's the beauty of the ground hunting. You're gonna actually make more mistakes than you do when you're in the tree stand, but you're gonna have a hell of a lot more encounters than guys sitting in a tree stand because you're always gonna be in the game. Like there's gonna be 100 times too where you look at signs and you think, this isn't quite good enough. I'm gonna move up, and then you bump something. Maybe you bump a buck that you want to shoot, but ultimately in learning every time that happens versus if you were to set up, let's say you find that sign, you're like, I'm gonna just set up here. And then you don't see anything. Maybe you didn't go that extra 50 yards and bump that buck. Yeah, you didn't bump anything, but you also didn't learn anything. You didn't see anything. You set up on sign that, wasn't, you were unsure about. Does that make sense?
No, it totally makes sense, man. And it's funny because you mentioned something similar, like a different topic, but like I think it's the same principle whenever we spoke the last time. And it's actually something I kind of live and die by now, to a degree, is, you had mentioned, that, you don't want to bump a buck necessarily, especially if it's one that you want to kill. But that real-time information that you just get is going to be the best information you will ever get about that deer because you knew where he was at, what time he was there, what the weather conditions were, how he exited, was he bedded, was he browsing, like you just got all this information that you can put in your bank to have a successful hunt later. And it's been really since, partially since that conversation that I've adopted like a way more aggressive style of hunting than I've ever had before, where now my kind of approach is, especially on like, if I'm on larger, it's dependent upon like what type of piece I'm hunting. Cause there's some pieces.
Yeah. I want to say, I would like to drop one thing in that I'm trying to remind myself to say, but I always forget. It's like the one thing about this style and in my situation too, is like I hunt public land and I like have a lot of acreage to work with in every situation. So keep that in mind if you're listening. Like, don't just be like, I couldn't do that on my property. And here's I would like to loop back to that though at some point too. Sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted to get that out there.
No, that's a fair point because that's kind of where I was headed. Was for me, I have to kind of decide, how aggressive I'm going to be dependent on the piece that I'm hunting. Because like for example, some of the pieces I hunt around the suburbs of Philly might only be 60-acre public land parcels, you know what I mean? And, or 100-acre public land parcels. I have a couple that are in like the 3,000 to 4,000, 3,000 to 4,000 acre range. And those I will hunt completely differently. Those small parcels, I'm typically making like a strategic move where I've found, primary scrape areas, next to side cover, next to bedding cover. And I'm probably going to strategically hunt that spot because I know that that's likely where I would have an encounter. The bigger pieces, like whenever I was out in Iowa, it was boots on the ground and walk until I ran into sign or I kicked deer up. Like that was it. You know what I mean? It's like I walked into the timber every morning going, there's really only a handful of outcomes I'm going to have. I'm either going to kick deer up and jump them, or I'm going to kill one. Either way, I'm going to find them. You know what I mean? That was that was my approach. Right. And I did, I had great encounters. I had great shot opportunities. I ended up passing a bunch of decent deer and ended up, eventually tagging one, and so it was just, once I committed myself to that aggressive approach, it's like I've had way better encounters. And that's why for me, looking at like the ground game, it's like, I don't know that I would commit to that's the only way I'm going to hunt necessarily. Cause I do enjoy hunting from an elevated platform, but it's going to be dependent on where I have the best opportunity. Cause there's some areas near a swamp that I have that are just so thick that you can't hunt from an elevated position because you'll never get a shot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But there's a definitive pinch point with two oaks that drop every October on the edge of this swamp between this huge rock and like the swamp reeds. That is like a highway is run through there. And I'm like, this setup is a ground setup all day, and it's in the nasty stuff, so no one else is hunting back there, because there's nowhere to get a tree stand or anything elevated in there. You know what I mean? So you can almost guarantee you're probably going to be the only person hunting that section. So.
Yeah, and I think, I think another thing, I feel like what you just said kind of relates to what I'm about to kind of dive into a little bit is one of the things that I hear a lot of people say is, you could never do that here. Cool hunt, but you could never do that here. And I 100% disagree. I think that there's definitely areas where it may be a little tougher, but you gotta, when you're doing it, just like, can't go, I guess maybe this would even be taking a little bit of a step back, but like, when I go hunting now, I don't like necessarily have a spot in mind. Mm-hmm. Just go hunting. Just go out. Like, no worries. I'm not trying to get there 45. I'm not trying to get there in the exact moment and walk in for 35 minutes and get to this spot and whatever. It's like, I go hunting, man. And like, just play it the way it plays out. And now, again, that's going to take some experience to feel confident doing that, because 3 years ago I wasn't doing that.
Right.
But I think in in 15, my hope is in 15 that it's even more laid back. It's like, I'm just going in, completely clear mind, and I'm just going hunting. Mm-hmm. I'm going to read sign. I'm going to look for deer. I'm going to listen. And I think when you can go into hunting with that mentality, you're gonna be able to do the ground hunting, the still hunting, the spot and stalk, in all different types of habitat and terrain. The scale is just going to change, right? Like,
right.
If I was hunting in, like, for example, if I'm hunting in New York and I'm hunting off the ground, I'm getting myself in positions where it's all timber, most of the public land is timber, and getting into areas where, okay, a lot of guys are hunting these transition areas between, most of the tree stands and hunter sign we find is between these two thickets. Well, I'm going to get in that thicket.
Right.
Like, I'm going to get smack in the middle, and, maybe I do find a place to go revisit and set up. But usually what ends up happening is like, end up getting an opportunity before, before I even have to go back and set up. So, like, I guess what I mean is like, I do a lot of what I consider, like, still hunt speed scout. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that, like, my pace can change dramatically. I mean, on the ground hunting, like, 1 minute I can be full sprint, carrying a canoe across the mud flap, and then, paddling as hard as I can. And then the next minute, like, creeping at a snail's pace for 2 hours. It's like, it's all relative to the situation. And I think, people look at it and they think, oh, I can never do that here, what, this, that, and the other. And it's like, I really do think that it just is something, as you do it more and more, you start to nail down, like, and I'm by no means perfect at it. I mean, I really do hope that in 10 years or whatever, down the road, I hope every year I continue to improve on it. Like, there's times I'm sure I'm going way too fast through the woods, and when I should be slowing down. Right. But until I make the mistake, I'm not going to learn. So it's like, just continue to, I don't know. I guess I might be rambling a little bit here, but just getting the experience doing it and trying it. It's like, it can be done everywhere, man. It really can be. I got a buddy in Pennsylvania, hunts the mountains of Pennsylvania. Has shot like 3 bucks off the ground, 1 with a rifle, 2 with a bow, and they're mature bucks.
Nice.
They're not little piss head bucks, like, they're big bucks.
Right.
So, like, it can be done. It's just a matter of, like, getting out there and giving it a try and continuing to learn.
Yeah. I mean, I think that goes with any style. I mean, I think that philosophy is like, whether you're hunting from the ground or whatever the case is, it's like, you just got to go out and make those mistakes. I mean, that's one thing, having a podcast and whatever, I get the, luxury of running into guys like you or Dan Enfold or Johnny Eberhard or whatever, like guys that I look at that are like accomplished dudes that I look at and say, I could learn a lot from these guys. You know what I mean? And to like, each one of them there's like a handful of things I've started kind of narrowing down that makes like those guys that I look up to, that makes them a really good hunter. And like the one thing is like they're extremely detail oriented. Like they don't ever
Yeah.
they don't ever pass an opportunity to ask the question why. Number one,
Yeah.
you know, number two, they typically are pretty aggressive, and they have different aggressive styles. They're aggressive in different
sure.
ways, you know. And then
Yeah.
the other one is that they have a very high threshold for failure. Like they are willing to go in and fail to get the information, to learn, to evolve and adapt. And like, and if you can't stand failing, you're going to have a hard time stomaching hunting, because it's like a 95% fail rate.
Yeah, I mean, you fail. Like, it's easy. It's honestly just easiest to say that you fail like every time.
Yeah.
Like you do.
Yep.
I mean, it's like you think about, okay, so I don't know, we were rough counting this the other day, and it's like, I mean, I've hunted or filmed upwards of 70 days. Or wait, I don't even know. Maybe 100. I hunted a lot of days this fall, in the 2019 season.
Right.
And the days that we had success was like 5.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're talking 100, I mean, I don't know that it's true or not, but 100 hunts, and I shot or filmed getting shot 5 animals, like that's 5%, dude. That's
Right.
nothing. You failed it. You almost failed every time. Like,
Right. Well, that's,
and it's just like,
the other thing is too,
you gotta appreciate that failure.
right. And the other thing is too, is like guys, or girls, setting the wrong expectation, where it's like taking you, for example, let's just use that 105, 5,
Yeah.
Successful hunts number. It's like you're out in the timber doing it 100 days a year, where the guy down the street he's hunting maybe 2 weeks out of the year based on how much time he has off. You know what I mean? It's like,
totally.
Of course you're going to fail. You know what I mean? Like you have to think about it in context of scale. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think, for me, the exciting part is the failing part, man. Like, cause to me, that's like that's where the meat is. You know what I mean? Like not saying, I mean, look, I want to wrap a tag around a buck every time I go out. Sure. I mean, that's my intent, but there's some hunts where I come back and I'm just like, I mean, there was an encounter I had in PA this year over this primary scrape area that was just like, it was a buck that I had found on a camera on this piece of public I'd never been on before. I just happened to throw a camera up by happenstance. I did kind of what you said. Like one day I just went and I speed scouted it on a hunt. It was in the evening, and I found this little like oak grove next to this like, gnarly kind of side cover near the swamp. And I found like a few scrapes that just got opened up. And I was like, man, in like 2 more weeks, I was like, I'm going to come back and check this. And if there's a bunch of scrapes open, because at that point, I think there was like 1. I was like, if I come back and there's like 5 opened up, I was like, then that tells me it's primary scrape area, side cover, I'm hunting it, I came back like 2 weeks later and it was completely tore up, set up, and the buck that I had seen on camera and wanted to try to get a shot at ended up showing up at like very last light. I never got a shot at him, but like I was like maybe more jacked about that hunt than almost any other hunt that I've had, arrowing a deer. Cause like I'd put the puzzle pieces together on a piece I'd never been on before, and part of it was like the first fail I had was I should have hunted it that first night I found it. You know what I mean? Like that was the fail.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I was going to ask, like, just because this is usually what ends up happening to me is like, I get kind of jacked up too. And then there's this like, that getting excited turns to me being pissed. Because I'm like, I know there's something that I could have done differently to where I could have killed that buck.
100%.
And it's like, then I'll sit there and I'll think about it for I mean, a lot of times a whole year.
Right.
Like, I do it with turkey too. I do it with deer, and it's a weird thing where I'll just like, there's a lot of time between a hunt and then, the attempt to do that same hunt or that same style hunt the next year. And it's like, you'd be surprised at how many days that encounter goes through my head, or that one mistake that I felt like, had we changed or had we done something differently, maybe we would have got a shot, or maybe, you know what I mean? It's just like, I feel like there's, so in that situation, what was your Like, what was your moment where you're like, shit, I should have done something different? Because I bet you have it.
Oh man, it was literally while I was watching him. I was watching him pop out, and I knew I wasn't going to get a shot opportunity because I'd lost. I was actually starting to tear stuff out of the tree. I was actually pulling pulling off my my gear, putting my pack on and stuff like that, and was getting ready to get ready to climb down. And when he popped out, I thought to myself, because when I got in there, I saw the scrapes, and I was like, man, I feel like he's going to come out at this area. And there was a split second where I was like, man, you should get back in the timber like 20 yards off this little grove. I was like, that will probably be the best opportunity, right? And I was like, no, I was like, because if I don't, I was like, he's going to come out to one of these scrapes and scent check these scrapes and probably tend them. I was like, and then I'm going to have zero shot opportunity if he comes out where I don't think he's going to come out. And so I ended up popping into the tree, and that's exactly, I mean, it was a definitive path that he was going to come out because he had it tore up with rubs, and there was a bunch of brush that was just all broken down in there that you could tell he was in there browsing and thrashing brush and stuff like that previously, to where it's like, there was 2 sets assigned to read. There was 3 sets assigned to read. There were fresh acorns that were there. This was like, I want to say maybe October 19th, I think, something like that. There were fresh acorns on the ground. There were probably 6 scrapes in this like small area. There was a definitive trail headed back into the brush that was all thrashed. And so those were the 3 pieces that I was kind of reading. And I was like, man, there's a triple trunk tree that's right there. I could slip in with the saddle and get between them. And that way I've got really great break up and I should be almost bulletproof. I was kind of giving him the wind a little bit too. I was like, or I could dive back into that cover about 20 yards and try to intercept him. That way I don't get dark deered. And that's, sure shit, that's what happened. So. Yeah, I still think about that hunt like almost. I mean, they're probably at least 3 times a week. I think about it.
So I think moving forward, it's like you have that experience. I mean, you're gonna sit there and you're gonna think about that for 365 days until you loop back, and you're gonna think about it. Maybe once every day or every couple of days, you're gonna think about that. But you may not think about it for like 5 minutes or even a minute, but it's going to slip your mind. You're going to think, that's a bit, Right. You're going to think about that. But then I think the difference between like making the same mistake and then doing like improving is if you keep that in your head, it's good to think about that because as soon as you get yourself in a similar situation or maybe even the same exact situation in the same spot next year, you're not going to make the same mistake. And if you do, if you do push a little too far, then you're going to learn the same way.
Right.
You're going to find that perfect sweet spot. And again, hopefully in 15, 20 years or whatever, when you've been bow hunting for, a really long time, you can honestly look at that spot and you'll know exactly what to do in that situation. But the beauty of bow hunting and the beauty of, more specifically like aggressive mobile hunting is no one situation is the same as the other situation. You're just trying to make a bunch of situations come together and put them into the moment. And I think, as it plays into ground hunting, it's just like constant little decision making. That's one of the fun things too. That there's a lot of benefits, and I honestly I think about like I like shot angles on the ground. I mean, I like not having a big scent cone. I don't think your scent goes far on the ground. Obviously, I talk about continuing to move and just learning constantly. I think there's tons of benefits. The list for me can go on and on, but from a fun standpoint, it's like I never have to stop like making a decision. Right. Where I feel like sometimes you get into a stand and you post up, and you're done, baby. You're just gonna coast it out till dark. And like, I'll be honest, that's boring. That's as boring as could be to me. Like it really is. It's
right.
Like all of a sudden, no more decisions are made. It's like now I sit here and I look at the leaves blowing, and I think, man, I wonder how. I'm trying to look at my binoculars and see how like fresh that scrape that's 25 yards away really is. And it's like where I feel like on the ground, it's just a constant. It's a constant game. Right. It's like it's like a board, like the difference between like a board game where like maybe you only make like a couple moves a game and it's really slow moving versus a board game where it's fast paced and you're constantly making decisions, right. Or like cards, I guess. It's something that's similar. Like I just really enjoy that aspect of like it's a constant game. It's just like what's next. and I love that.
Right. I mean, you
You're
mentioned
gonna ask about
what's
you're gonna ask about the scent cone. You're gonna ask about the scent cone.
Well, that's one of the, we can go to the scent cone, man. Like let's do that. I got a couple things, but the one thing I will say though, just to kind of, piggyback off of what you mentioned, and then we can go to the scent cone, is it's one of those things. I feel like whether you're hunting from the ground or whether you're hunting from a saddle or whatever the case is, that whole idea of moving and learning, I think is
Mm-hmm.
is so important. Because just what you were talking about, like it was interesting. No one's ever asked me what I learned from that hunt, and because I'd learned it like in that moment. I knew what I'd done wrong,
Mm-hmm.
like that in that specific moment. And so when I went to Iowa, my whole thing was to like continually, like, don't second guess my decisions. Don't let that one choice where I made the wrong decision force me to second guess all my decisions, right? Because it's going to be a progressive learning experience, right? And so I can't get myself in a situation where I have, analysis paralysis, right? And so the way I ended up killing that deer that I killed was I'd played cat and mouse with a specific deer for a couple days, where I missed the same deer twice within like 4 days. And
Yeah.
then I finally just was, I was scouting, I was finding him again. I was scouting and I was finding him again. And I finally was like, I was just on the outskirts of where I thought I needed to be. And this is where that learning came in, where like I had seen him over a scrape and I'd missed him. I had moved a little closer in, and then he came back out, but he got stuck on this shelf. And like, after I saw what happened, I realized, again, another learning opportunity, where he had a weird encounter with me the day before. And so he wasn't going to come the whole way out. So he stood at the top of this shelf. And what I figured out, the reason he did was that deer lived in that area. I found his beds and stuff like that in there, that he knew if he stood at that little shelf at that draw long enough, that the wind would eventually swirl and he would get a nice little thermal draw up that little slope. And
Yeah.
he could scent check that whole area. Now, he didn't bust me, but he just had enough to where he was like, I don't feel good. And so he just backed out, right? And so I went back home that night to my cabin. I'm laying there like, why did that deer do that? And that's when it dawned on me that that's what he was doing. And so then I was like, all right, I got to switch it up. I was like, I got to run roughshot through that area, find his sign, find where he's been bedded. And then I got to figure out how I'm going to kill him in there, because that's where he's safe. That's where he's going to spend time. And he had does in there. And so I ended up just scouting like the next day over a couple ridges. And the truth was, I only ended up in about 150 yards where I was at previously, but I was along the edge of this draw that I could use as like a barrier, because he would have to expose himself, and I could cut the wind just right to where he thought he was going to have the wind. I ended up jumping a buck out of the bed, tried to bump and dump. He didn't come back. 2 young bucks came through. And so the next day I was like, you know what, that's the spot. And I walked through, scouted my way in, jumped into that spot. And I literally put an Instagram post out on my Instagram stories with the picture of a tree and with an arrow. It says, "Want to kill deer here." And where do you think I arrowed that deer? That exact spot where that arrow was pointed. You know what I mean? And so it was like, it was that learning from that blown opportunity over that scrape in Pennsylvania that led me to like continue to dissect, tweak, read the sign, make decisions, and then voila. You know what I mean? And I wasn't scared to bump deer. I wasn't scared to push deer. I just knew I needed to get into his business and mix it up.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think that it's just like what you just said, though. It's like it's very hard for people, man. And I think that fear of spooking deer is like something I wish, like I think as a group of hunters, like once you realize that it is okay, you got to help your fellow hunters continue to like learn that it is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't want to be the only person to know that it's okay, and I don't want people to think I'm full of shit.
Right.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Like you can spook deer. You can spook deer and kill the same deer. You can spook deer in some situations 5 times in the same spot and kill that deer in the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that that's something you should try to make a habit of, but people fear it so bad that they won't hunt. They really won't even put themselves in the game.
Yeah.
They see it over and over and over and over and over again. I see it with some of my friends. It's like, dude, like just bust out of that. Like, it's fine. It's okay. Like just go in there and get crazy. Like what do you got to lose?
That's just it, man.
And you have and that I think unfortunately the fear is everybody thinks that they're going to lose their chance at a big buck, but ultimately they've already lost their chance of big
Yeah.
bucks. They never even put themselves in the game.
That was the one thing once I kind of was able to, I guess absorb that and like come to terms with it. It changed.
Mhm.
It changed everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I almost look at it now that if I don't bump deer at some point, then I'm not actually in the hunt because
Yeah,
I've
no,
not
for sure.
gotten close enough. You know what I
I
mean?
think of, I think, and I think of, you know, well, let's put, I'll use a personal example. 2016, that was the year that I really first started hunting off the ground. But then I started, got later in November, I started resorting back to what I knew, and I honestly kind of look back at that and think of that as a wimping out type of move. But whatever, I did what I did, and I remember having this spot come through, and I shot and missed it, and a few days later, so I ended up missing that buck, and I remember thinking, well, that was my opportunity, like. I saw one big buck this year, and like that was my chance. And lo and behold, I ended up getting another shot at that buck, same general vicinity, basically the other side of the ridge, and on a little bit different wind, and ended up getting him. And I look back on that now, and I look back on all the other times that I was hunting tree stand then, and I was seeing these deer, and I was seeing them from a distance, and a lot of times you get encounters from a tree stand where you're like not close or whatever, but you maybe not losing as many deer. But it's like I would think about the times where like maybe one thought I was making the right move that spooked him, or I thought I was getting into the right area and I went too far and I bumped one. It's like, and I remember you look at those experiences, you're like, man, that was a big buck. Like, no way I'm gonna get another chance. But the more aggressive you hunt and the more you put yourself in the cave, I honestly believe the more opportunities you're going to get at these big bucks. Like, there's more big bucks out there than everybody thinks.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like everybody's just like, and myself included, even to this day, I'm sitting here telling you this, but I know I do it too. I'm like, son of a bitch. I just messed up a big buck. Like, I'm never going to see a big buck again. It's like, turning around in a couple of days, I see another big buck.
Right.
And it's like, I think a lot of people, just again, right, you get habitual, you get content. You think, oh, I don't want to spook anything, I don't want to mess anything up. Well, what are you really messing up? And and I guess I just think about like times I've found, and I guess maybe this will help make this make a little bit more sense. And I'm looking at an area and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going. Let's just say new state. This is as fresh as I can be in an area. Go to a new state. Go to a new piece of public, and first thing I'm doing is cruising through it, like slowing down when I feel get kind of bird doggy, feel like okay, there's some fresh signs popping up, but otherwise just cruising through, trying to see if okay, is it worthwhile spending time in this chunk. And I'll do that at like 5 different spots, and throughout going to 5 different spots, 10 different spots, whatever it may be, I end up finding these areas that are just like on fire, dude, like just on fire. There's like so many scrapes, so many rubs, and they're hot too, man. Like there's fresh piss in the scrape. There's shavings and rubs on the ground. There's mud on the leaves where the deer came out of the swamp from that morning. Like they're in there today. When they're in there that packed, and you find that great spot. I found that great spot in Ohio, in New York. I found it but I've also found it. I mean, I've found it elk hunting. You're moving until you find max sign, and then it's time to slow everything down. And usually, even if okay, so let's say you find that area, and your area has a low mature buck density. Let's say you're in, I don't know, take a stab at a state. Say you're in, your area, eastern Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Let's say you're in eastern Pennsylvania, and you're looking at this area, and you find that max deer sign, where you're like the deer density is, it's got all the factors that deer need. It's got the security cover, it's got the water, it's got the food sources. There's max deer sign in there. Even if you bump the one buck that's in there that day, because that spot's holding so many does that are potentially coming into estrus, or just such great factors that make the deer want to be there. They're coming back. Like they are. And if he doesn't, another one is.
Right.
Like another one will. Even if it seems like there's no way there's another mature buck in the area. If an area has that good a sign, about no matter where you're at in the country, there's probably more than one big buck using it at least some of the time. And I truly believe if you were to bump one or kill one out of an area, it doesn't take but a few days for another one to move right in there, because they're moving more in the dark than what we think, and they're smelling a lot of stuff. So what happens in the dark,
Right.
and maybe that leads into just scent in general, and we could maybe dive into that topic a little bit, like how
Yeah, man.
scent can play into.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk
ground hunting.
about that. Is the whole scent cone thing that you had mentioned? That, just start wherever you want to start, man. Like, so what's your approach to scent whenever you're hunting on the ground?
So I don't know. I probably told you this on some of the other times we've recorded, but I don't pay attention to like the way I smell. I mean, I'm usually pretty greasy, I think. I wear my clothes, pump gas, like I'm whatever. My hunting clothes are pretty much my life clothes for however many months out of the year.
Right.
I know the deer are going to smell me, but one thing I've observed, and then I want to talk about one thing I've observed from the straight up, wind coming off my body type standpoint, and also want to talk about ground scent.
Right.
And a little theory that I have there. So don't let me forget about that ground scent theory.
Okay.
So when I'm set up, or I'm still hunting through the timber, I really think when I'm elevated up in a tree stand, I really think I'm down low on the ground. A lot of times my scent isn't going that far. I'm not saying you don't have a scent cone, but I don't think that scent cone is huge. I think a lot of times you drop milkweed, or maybe they're just using like your scent wind indicator in any form. You're watching it; it gets hung up and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that brush, low vegetation, or just trees, or tree trunks in general, I think it kind of masks that scent down. Where you get into a tree stand, and that scent just goes forever. You're elevating it. So it's like the dispersal of the scent is like so much bigger than if you're just on one small area, especially in tight cover. And when you got a low wind morning, you really can't smell you that well, like when you're on the ground.
Right.
Because it's not like it's pulling down, or if it's pulling down and going right into the dirt, your scent cone is significantly smaller, in my opinion, when you're ground hunting. Just period. Like, I think anytime you elevate yourself, I think it when you really break it down, you think about it, it just does make more sense. Put yourself up in the air, you're gonna have more scent around you.
Right.
It's like, but if you're on the ground, it kind of gets stuck. I think wind gets a little bit more stuck when it's down at ground level, just because there's so many things that kind of box it in. So, I think I've spooked less deer by wind than I did in the tree stand ever, by like a long shot.
Wow.
So then that brings up, and that's talking about more specifically setup. Like when I was doing a lot more ground, actual setup, just like very noticeable difference of like that deer went downwind at like 60, and like he might have known something was up, but he didn't really know what was up. You know what I mean? He never blew, and they can tell something's wrong, but it's not that same like hitting a brick wall like you get when you're in a tree stand and it's nothing but field or nothing but open timber towards them. You're elevated. They hit that sun. They're just like, yo, I'm getting out of here.
Right.
You do it on the ground, and I really feel like you can let deer get a lot closer on the downwind side of you. And I'm sitting in the airport, and some guy just walked past and was like punching the air. It's pretty funny.
He was he has a ground scent theory. Apparently, he's working it.
He was fired up. He was fired up about it.
Yeah.
So then the ground scent theory is like, I think about like what is a deer thinking when it smells me, right? So like what it's kind of come down to is like, what are these deer actually smell? Because like clearly, if I'm walking right through the heart of a bedding area and seeing a bunch of sign, or I'm bumping deer or whatever, like I'm mature buck, even if I don't bump him directly, like he's going to smell me. He's going to smell me in that area at some point. But he's moving through there, whether it's in daylight or in the dark. He's going to know I was there. So I guess my theory that's come about with doing this is like, starting to think of it like, if you could smell, if you could tell everybody's fed, or if a deer can, and it smells a coyote go through the middle of the bedding area, do you think it's going to avoid that area? No. But does a deer want to be right around a coyote? No.
Right.
But I think if all of a sudden a coyote made a den right in the middle of the bedding area, again, that's a different story. Now they're going to probably start avoiding that area, or when they move through it, they're going to check out that area. So I think when you start habitually like hunting out of specific trees, or like maybe a permanent tree stand setup, or a board, or you have a ground setup that you really like and you continue to set that up. Like at some point that you set up in that area, like at some point the buck's going to smell your permanent tree stand or your little makeshift ground blind or whatever. You may be able to get 2 or 3 sits before he does that. But like at some point he's going to find it and he's going to look at it and he's going to avoid it. I think that a mature buck or deer in general can straight up tell the difference between somebody just cruising through their bedding area or somebody who's like made a habit of like sitting in there or spending a lot of time in there. So at least in my experience, when you just move through and you do a quick speed scout, don't worry about leaving your scent right in the middle of the bedding area. But don't do it, don't make a habit of it.
Right.
But like figure out what you need to figure out and then approach it in a direction that you feel is the safest. But you can't just, I don't know. I guess I just think of like, I still totally support mobile tree stand setup or mobile ground setup. Do. And I'm not ever going to say that I'm going to not do them either.
Right.
I'm not only ever going to hunt off the ground. I'm going to just do what makes the most sense in every situation.
Right.
But I think that, I guess I just think that too many people like try to go in like almost blind, or like they bank on a lot of sign that they found in February or something. They go in on October 20th. They got a cold front. They go in there and they set up. Well, like if you don't know that the sign is hot right there, you're wasting your time.
Yeah, 100%.
You have to know. So like whether you go, okay, so let's say you have your climber on your back and you're going to go hunting. Don't just walk from point A, which is the truck, to your setup and just set up and say, good enough. There was bucks in here last year. That's not good enough. Right. If you want to up your game, I feel very passionate about this. Don't do that.
Right.
Now, what you should do is go in, check a couple areas, check signs coming out of areas, scout your way in, and say, okay, deer are here, just like they were last year, just like I thought when I was scouting in February. Now I'm going to set up.
Yep.
Don't just go into an area, though, and just set up just because it looked good or it shows up good on a map, or last year there was white oaks and the bucks were in there, or 2 years ago you saw a big one going through here. Don't do that. I mean, it's just one of those things that I think, if you're really trying to maximize your efficiency in the woods, you don't want to just go in and blind set up, because again, I'm lucky enough to hunt a bunch of days out of the year. If you're going to hunt 9 days out of the year, don't go in and waste your time setting up at a spot that's not, the deer aren't it. And I just think that that's one advantage we have of being mobile and, maybe even more specifically ground hunting. It's like, but here's also the disadvantage. So I will say one of the disadvantages, one of the things that in 2020 I really want to improve on is I look at the things that I've done as far as like success, and then I think about the things that I've done where I look back and I'm like, man, I probably went through that too fast. I probably should have thought about setting up. Probably should have like hit the brakes a little bit and tried to break this down a little bit more. But instead I have this like desire to learn more. Like I got it more. I get greedy out there. And I think one thing that I want to improve on is just like at least finding a time where it's like, okay, no matter what happens at this time of the day, I'm going to try to like, just hang loose, not get ahead of myself. Maybe really try to set up for that last hour and a half or 2 hours.
Right.
Versus like continuing to push, continuing to cover ground, because I think there's a point too where, at least for myself personally, I get a little greedy. I want to learn a ton. I want to, if I can hit 5 potential bedding ridges versus 3, I'm going to try to get to 5.
Right.
I think sometimes that gets a little out of hand. But
yeah.
But at the same time, I do believe there's benefits to that too.
Yeah.
Even if you are messing stuff up.
No, I 100% agree, and I've been guilty of that myself. I mean, I just did it 2 weekends ago. I was out trying to scout a piece that had really not hunted this particular area. I was trying to find a setup for late season, and I was did what you just kind of what we were talking about, where I just got in and was like, I'm walking. I don't have a destination in mind. I have a couple spots on the map that I looked at that I thought were interesting. I was like, I'm just going to try to hit these, and the first one that looks good is where I'm going to kind of stop. And so I found some okay setups, but I was like, I wonder what's down here just a little bit further. And so I just kind of kept going. And before I knew it, it was dark, and I had yet to I didn't set up anywhere. And then I was walking back to the truck, and I was like, but I mean, I learned a ton. That was the whole thing, where it was I put a bunch of info in the bank, where it's I now have a better understanding of that area. I have a better understanding of how deer are using that particular piece of that area. And, so now when I go back in to hunt it, when I looked at it, I was like, after, going through it, I was like, this is really an early October, mid-October setup. That's what how it read to me. And so now I know, you know what I mean? It's I don't need to go back in there again this year. There was some sign in there that looked like it was pre-rut sign. And so I was like, I'll hit it next year, around the second week of October, and go through it and see if I find if the sign that I saw now is hot during that time frame. And
that's what you just said right there, though, is key. And I know you know it, but for those listening, what he just said is key, because you're going to go into this area and you're going to make sure, though, that what your theory was holds true. And I think so many people just fight on that theory that they made. And the reason I'm feel so strongly about this, dude, is because I feel like I did this all the time.
Oh, 100%.
I would fight so hard. I'd be like, oh no, that sign was made November 19th. That's when I'm coming back in here. What the hell am I talking about?
Right.
I've just bit on some theory that I made up in my head, when there's so many little factors that, it was in a given year, and with hunting pressure and food source change, crop rotation, rainfall. Honestly, rainfall is a huge thing huge factor that's going to change where deer are. So every little aspect of it, you have to just go back and make sure, and I know you will, but just the key is, in my opinion, and a lot of gals are overlooking when they're going in and they're hunting the area, and they bite on a time frame, and that's not a good habit to create either, because again, if he's not there at that time frame, and he's a quarter mile down the ridge, or a couple hollows over, or whatever, spending his time there, then if you're not in the game, he's not on October 27th on your one day out of a 2-week time frame to hunt, if you're not within 200 yards of him, you're not even in the game, because he's not going to just run 3 ridges over again. He may be in the same woods as the deer. You probably are in the same woods as the deer.
Right.
But if you're not right on him, you gotta be right on him, man. And I really, as far as mobile goes, I think that the ground hunting thing is super important. And well, by the way, I don't know how long you are wanting to talk, but I still have a whole nother hour, so I'm good to talk for as long as you want. I'm just I'm enjoying it. So
nice, yeah. I'm down.
However long you want to roll.
Yeah, I'm down, man.
Okay.
I didn't know if maybe you wanted to go talk to Air Punching Guy. Maybe you guys could rap about some scent cones and whatever.
It was a pretty funny sight. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of things that I feel like I'll never be able to cover it all, but there's some things that I feel like could really help people that are interested in, because I really, really, really want to help inspire people to try to do something different. I think, I guess just trying to get people out there, giving it a shot, I think is important.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Any way I can help, tell people like my failures. It's like makes it way easier when you're starting to get into it to just be like, that's what I'm going to avoid.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, it's I think giving people different options and letting them know that, you know, the barrier to entry isn't as great as they might think. You know what I mean? I think is important because I think, you know, I'll just be perfectly honest. Like sometimes for me, like the way I'm looking at it this year, you know, and adding ground hunting to my arsenal is really for a couple of reasons. One is because I think there's some setups that I think that I can have that are really good in some places that I've scouted that I think the ground would be better for a bunch of different reasons, whether it's shot angle, whether it's because it's only a really conducive to a ground setup that other guys aren't really hunting it, so it's not getting pressure. So I think deer are going to congregate in that general area, which I'll verify through sign, you know, and scouting hot sign like the day that I'm hunting, you know, or because, you know, I'm a working dude in the mornings. Like there's some setups I could run in the mornings because I'm not trying to get in and out of a tree. So I don't have to take nearly as much stuff with me. It's walk in with my bow, a ghillie jacket on, and set up. And then I can get out quickly to be able to make it back to work, to make it to work before 9 o'clock. You know what I mean? So for me, some of it's like an efficiency game too. All right, folks, that's a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We'd be super appreciative if you do those two things for us. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Skull Brew Coffee Company, Gumleaf USA Boots, Obsession Bows, Ramcat Broadheads, Trophy Taker Rests, and Dead Downwind. And until next time, we'll see y'all.